You ready?
Yeah. Hey guys, I'm Alex.
And I'm Drew.
And today on the Two Man Comic Book Club podcast, we're taking a look at Spider-Man Kraven's Last Hunt. Let's go. I always look forward to seeing what you say right before we start, because on YouTube, I just leave it in to give us a little scan, and I was hoping that you stopped right after, oh, yeah. When you talked a little bit more, it's fine.
Well, you could cut.
I could, but then I'd be a liar.
Okay. Well, I mean, to be completely honest, sometimes for
You
the
just lie all over our podcast.
No, the tags that I put in at the end, sometimes I cut and paste those to make them funnier.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not like
It's not
some of those
really
moments.
organic.
There were probably 30 seconds of absolute doldrum in between some of those things. So I'll allow you to do it if you want.
Okay. How goes it, my friends?
It's good.
Good. We are meeting today to discuss a critically acclaimed.
Award-winning.
Award-winning.
Is it award-winning?
I feel like it has to be, but maybe not. I don't know how big
award-winning, critically acclaimed Berryville
comic
High School
awards
marching
were.
band.
Yeah. Kraven's Last Hunt is objectively one of the most iconic Spider-Man stories of all time.
If you Google top 10 Spidey stories, I'm willing to bet whichever one you click on is going to have this at number 1 or 2.
Yeah.
For some reason.
It's up there. And hot take, and Drew will get to discuss this more in a little bit, he wasn't very high on it when he first read it. I mean, it could be an absolute symptom of just overhype if you build something up in your head to just be like this god tier comic, and then you read it and it doesn't just land. I will say, without getting into it too much before we do our usual business, that it is like a I don't even know it's a little heavier for sure. It's absolutely a dark story, and has some adult themes. I will say from the onset now that there are some suicide things discussed in that. So if you or somebody close to you listening to that might be affected by listening to that sort of content, that your heads up about that. Also,
drugs.
Maybe right here on the video or in the description somewhere, we can put a link to a national suicide hotline if you know of somebody or you are struggling with those thoughts. So anyway, that was your warning. It is, all that being said, a very good. I really liked the story, but we'll get into that in a minute. But before that, Drew, what you been reading, yo?
I'm going to try to be quick about this because I have a tendency to not. So since it's Spidey month,
You take your time.
I'm trying to also carry that into my reading. So I rewatched Into the Spider-Verse recently, and it made me remember that I wanted to read some Spider-Gwen.
Yeah.
So I did. I started reading one that I thought was the first one. And turns out it was the second run. So I made it to like number 5 or 6, and I was just like, I thought this was supposed to be wrapping up. And I realized, I'm reading Radioactive Spider-Gwen, not Spider-Gwen.
How were those 5 issues?
They were good. Yeah, I enjoy it.
Do you have the writing team?
I don't. Not off the top of my head. I'm sorry. But I plan to go back and actually read the first one and then pick back up. I also picked up where we left off with One More Day by reading the first 2 or 3 of Brand New Day, which is like where it is. So I'm going to try to keep reading that. Just kind of see. It'll take me forever to catch up, but get an idea of Spidey. Also, I read something that I'm thinking we might end up talking about a little bit later, Far Sector, which is a new 12-ish. I think it's just 12 and done.
It's a DC book.
DC Young Animals imprint. It is a Green Lantern, the farthest out Green Lantern, literally the farthest sector. And there's this, the main character, she was like super smart. She went to Princeton, also was in the military and then the police, and then got like dishonorably discharged because she spoke out against her not so ethical partner. And anyway, so she ends up out in this far sector, being the only human on this world, this whole system that doesn't have emotion.
So she is a Green Lantern?
She's a Green Lantern.
And the system doesn't have emotion.
Right.
But she does.
Yes. They brought her in specifically that because there's like a drug or something, or there's a potential for them to start having emotions again, but they're worried about the backlash. Right. So they bring her in to kind of be a peacekeeper and all this stuff. Really interesting. Cool. A lot of like as I was reading it, it hit in a few places. So Far Sector, Green Lantern, I think it was out last year.
That sounds cool. I think you sold me. I'm going to start reading it today.
It's all on DC Universe.
Yeah.
If you want to check it out. So I think that's all I've been reading, yo.
That's pretty quick.
What about you?
I've read a few things. Also in the vein of wanted to read some extra Spider-Man. If you're in the Discord, you probably already heard this, but I read Nonstop Spider-Man by Joe Kelly and Chris Pachalo. Really cool story. It's self-described as, and after reading it, I believe this to be accurate, Spider-Man with a vibe of like the film Speed, and that's the Keanu Reeves like bus thing. And then also, what's the Jason Statham Crank? Yes, they wanted to bring the energy and like the intensity of those two films into a Spider-Man comic. Now, that being said, it doesn't necessarily deal with the same themes, especially of Crank, that are in that. But very high energy book. The art was incredible. Very unique look. But I remember just like flipping through it really fast because I felt they did a good job of like making me like have a little bit of an adrenaline rush.
I noticed I felt that with Kraven this time around, actually, a little bit.
Yeah, like moving through. So highly recommend that one. I think it's over, but immediately launching into something. Yes, it is, for sure. I think it's like 5 issues of it, all on Marvel Unlimited already. And then like the ending of that goes into something that is coming out. Not out yet, I don't believe.
Can I interrupt real quick?
Go ahead.
And say, I looked up the creators of Far Sector specifically because it's written by N.K. Jemisin. I think she's done some other stuff before. I don't know her. And Jamal Campbell is the artist who was the artist for Naomi.
Okay, yeah. I was going to say, we've had some of their content on. I couldn't remember who it was going to be.
Anyway,
yeah.
I just wanted to mention
Cool, that. Yeah. Amazing Fantasy, I also talked about in the Discord. This is a kind of a nod to some of the original Marvel comic titles. And this specific run by, I think it's Carrie Andrews, except it's either Carrie or Kari, Kaare. I don't think it's Carr.
K-Rai.
Carrie. I'm so sorry if you're listening. But they wrote and drew the book.
Oh, those are always cool.
Yeah. And it is I'm still trying to figure it out. I've only read 3 issues of it, but it has World War II Captain America, freshly escaped from the Red Room Black Widow, and teenage Peter Parker. And they are all maybe killed right away, or they're dreaming, or something in between. I'm not sure yet, but they're all thrust into this fantasy world, which may be heaven, it may be hell, it may be purgatory. I don't know yet, but they're not aware of each other yet. They're all in like this own, like it's kind of like a crash landing, if you will. They don't know they're here, and they're interacting with the locals of this place wherever they're at in different and interesting ways so far. So I'm really excited to see where that goes. But the first 3 issues, solid. Art's really cool. And it's also just like a cool collection of three Marvel heroes in very unique points in their history. You know, like if you put yourself in the mindset of Captain America in the middle of, one of the biggest wars, and Black Widow literally escaping, the Red Room, and then just a teenage Peter Parker where some of his most interesting stuff happened. It's a cool dynamic put between them all. And then finally, last night, I read issues 78, 79, 80, and maybe 81. I think 4 issues of Nightwing by Tom Taylor and Bruno Redondo. It was so good. Like I was actually like zooming through that. I couldn't get enough of it. The art depicts action in such a cool and creative way. Like you just feel the action coming off of it. Sometimes
when was this from?
This is like the one that's ongoing right now.
Cool.
So, I mean, I guess technically Nightwing started in 2016 and they've been just switching writers, but it's still technically on the same run. But I believe Tom Taylor took over at 78. If I'm not mistaken, this has been nominated for an Eisner, maybe. Tom Taylor is one of the bigger writers for DC right now, and and Marvel as well, right? Is he doing things for both? I think. I could be misspeaking on that, but this first 4 issues were so cool, and the art was so good, and just the pacing of it just one of the best comic books I've read in a long time, and I'm excited to read more of that. Enough to where I think I might try to pick up like a trade when it comes out, just because.
Nice.
Every once in a while, you come across ones that I want to actually own physical copies of this.
I kind of thought that about Far Sector too.
Yeah.
I just think it was a good one. Might be cool to have in the collection. So,
Right. Yeah. I'm trying to like take a new approach of my comic reading so that I don't break the bank. That's priority right now. Just read a lot of digital stuff right now, and then go back to the stuff that I really enjoyed, and like get the hard copies of it, and just still support the artists that I like. That's it for me. What about you, Tori? What have you been reading?
I just finished the run of Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, which was my resolution last year.
You just barely missed it.
Yeah.
Hold on. Is that Unbeatable Squirrel Girl? Did I spell squirrel correctly?
Squirrel.
Yeah. I'm trying to see who wrote that one.
I don't remember off the top of my head.
That one's not it.
Was it a squirrel?
Is it the one DJ was talking about? Ryan North?
That name sounds.
I think
right.
it's Ryan North. It's from 2015.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a really popular one. Somebody, Shane Carlson in the Discord was asking about that. We might have to cover some Squirrel Girl.
Did you like it?
Yeah, I did. I thought it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it has a cartoony.
Are those like funny?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, still some stuff, but Squirrel Girl's pretty powerful.
I've
She's
only
taken down some heavy hitters.
I've only seen Squirrel Girl in Secret Wars. There was like a
right.
tie-in that she was a part of, and that was my introduction to her. So
Cool. Anything else before we jump into Kraven's Last Hunt? We do have a lot to discuss.
yeah. Before we get started, I'll just go ahead and say, if you're listening, it'd be awesome if you joined us on Discord. Link down in the show notes. Patreon.com/2Man Comic Book Club with the number 2. If you like it and you want to support us. I just had a brain fart. Give us a phone call, 662-MAN-FAN-8, or you can find us on various places at 2Man Comic Book with the number 2 on Twitter, at 2Man Comic Book Club on Instagram. Just search 2Man Comic Book Club. You'll find us. Yeah. What about, do you want to
you can
dispel yours?
find me at Alex Wayne Miller. Wayne is Wayne, just like Bruce Wayne, because I am Batman. Tori, where can they find you on the interwebs?
You can find me at Torrance Watkins on Twitter, just doing it up.
Cool.
And if you want to find anything about me, just go to drewmorrismusic.com and you'll find something.
All right, we're going to jump into Kraven's Last Hunt. Again, this is an iconic Spider-Man story. What's up?
I realized in our first week of Spidey month,
Yeah.
we didn't do a 60-second catch-up. Do we want to do a belated one? Just
Take the reins on it, my friend.
Geez. Peter Parker, resident nerd of Midtown High, gets bitten by a, depending on where you, a radioactive spider, genetically modified spider,
Yeah.
gene therapy
retconned
spider.
several times.
Yeah. Anyway, and he gets Spider-Man does whatever a spider can, but not really,
He gets
because
the powers.
contrary to popular belief, he doesn't actually zap out web
Yeah.
from his body.
Not
like
in most universes.
Tobey Maguire's thing.
Right.
He builds a thing, but he can stick to walls. He has precognitive-ish spider
Spidey
sense
sense.
abilities.
And then proportional strength, yeah.
Yeah. So, but anyway, he's known as your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Does a lot of neighborhood things, taking care of the sort of stuff around New York. He's a Queens boy. Early in his time, his uncle Ben was killed, and that set him on a path to revenge and responsibility. And now he is his Aunt May, which in some cases he lives with, in some cases he doesn't. In this one, I think he's old enough that he just got married to his childhood sweetheart, Mary Jane Watson, and they just got married and they're newlyweds.
Yeah.
Until Kraven enters the picture.
Yeah.
I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
What's the story? Do you know what the story is with this black suit? Like,
Yes, this is post Secret Wars,
mhm.
which was at a surface level. This was a new reason for them to print new toys and get everybody excited about Spider-Man. He got this new suit at Secret Wars. Later, this is retconned to be a Venom
I was wondering about that.
symbiote thing.
In terms of when this was written, this was not a Venom thing. It was just
I believe that
slick
Venom
new
comes a little bit later in the
Okay.
late 80s, early 90s, which we're just now in the late 80s.
So yeah, normally we see him zipping through New York in a blue and red suit.
If I misspoke on the timeline of that, call me out on Twitter.
But in this one, he's got black head to toe, except for a really big white spider that reaches across his chest and around his back, and big white eyes. And he actually has these white things back here on his hand. I'm not sure what those are about.
Yeah, I think it's just design. It's a pretty iconic suit, though. It's very popular. A lot of people know the black suit Spider-Man. Kraven also has history with this character, but it is changed quite a bit. They took some liberties with the character. The creative team here is J.M. DeMatteis on the writing, Mike Zeck doing pencils and colors, Bob McLeod doing the inks, Bob Sharen doing other colors with Janet Jackson as well, and then Rick Parker doing letters. This also spans several different Spider-Man issues, similar to what we had last week. So we have a Web of Spider-Man issue number 31, The Amazing Spider-Man issue 293, Peter Parker, The Spectacular Spider-Man issue 131, back to Web of Spider-Man for 32, The Amazing Spider-Man for 293, and then back to Peter Parker, The Spectacular Spider-Man issue 132. So two issues from three different series, all in succession. There's a lot we're going to cover, like higher level stuff again, and just talk about some of the themes. We're not going to go through. This is for sure one that you probably will want to read multiple times just to get everything that happens.
I do have to say, I'll go ahead and interrupt now
go ahead.
say, I read this like a year ago because I heard it was good, and I was not a fan.
Yeah.
Like I read it and I was just like, what is the deal with this? Like, this is supposed to be the number one Spidey story. I mean, it was good. It was interesting. I just didn't enjoy it. I turned around and read Batman's Court of Owls afterwards and felt like they were reskinning of the same story. It was interesting. So, in a certain way.
Right.
I recommend you check that Court of Owls out. But now I came back and read this knowing what is going to happen, and it read completely differently. So I think if you read it the first time and you're like, well, that was okay, turn around, give it some time, reread it, because I didn't walk away from it thinking, man, I understand the hype now. But I walked away from it the second time thinking, okay, yeah, I mean, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
I read more into it. There were certain things that I enjoyed more and I understood better.
Right.
So I don't hate it.
That's good.
It's probably still not in my top 10 of my favorite stories.
Right.
But it's not in the bottom 10 either. So that's something.
Yeah, so I think I'll preface some of them. We'll come back to this as we go through some of the issues. Kraven's Last Hunt is, for the time especially, a book that like looks at very interesting themes as far as like what it means to be great, what it means to be quote unquote a man, which obviously that concept has evolved quite a bit over the years as far as just like masculine and feminine identities of things. So, but the fact that they were touching on these things in 1987, and then actually some of my trivia later talks about how this idea might have been talked about even before this. But we essentially have this hunter, this big game hunter, Kraven, who has been hunting Spider-Man before, going out for one last hunt on what he believes is basically like the greatest. It's man is the greatest game to hunt, or what's the saying for that?
The most dangerous game.
The most dangerous game. That's what it is. It's a little bit of that flavor throughout the whole series, but it gets into a thing of Kraven asking himself if not only can he kill Spider-Man, but can he be Spider-Man, or at least the idea of Spider-Man better than Spider-Man can himself. It's like asking those questions and talking about that concept of what it actually means, and then even more interestingly so, how Kraven is maybe trying to portray a picture of what he thinks Spider-Man is versus what he actually is, and like just people's perspectives on that sort of thing. So there's a lot to unpack here. We'll do our best to like get at least a surface level and dig a couple feet deep into the story. But again, encourage you to go back and read this. You absolutely do not have to have any context. I don't think like it stands alone on its own pretty well. I think. I mean, as long as you have just a basic idea of who Spider-Man is, and I think maybe just knowing what he stands for, I think is a big theme of this. But anyway, Drew, do you want to walk us through the first issue?
We get introduced to Kraven, and he's hopping around naked, and
right here we get this. It doesn't show anything.
No,
but
it's PG.
Some heavy shadows.
But he's fighting. Kraven he's just introducing himself,
right.
For the benefit of people who start reading this and don't know who he is. Russian, coming from Russia whenever his family gets run off, whatever.
Also describing just all of his accomplishments, even, like all the hunts that he's done with such ease and how much power he has.
Yeah. But yeah, he's just fighting. And then, what is this? Sorry, it's going slow.
You're good.
He's just walking up to this empty coffin, and he takes out this Spider-Man outfit, and you're like, uh-oh, something's about to happen.
Yeah. And during this whole thing, he's kind of recollecting on things, and he says, I will die soon. I must die soon. So we get a little bit of the vibe of where this last hunt is coming from.
Yeah. And, there's a whole lot. What I will say is the stuff that he's talking about now gets restated like 3 times in the story. So you read it and you'll get it. Then we jump over and we actually see what Spidey's up to. There's a funeral or a memorial, maybe is better, at a bar for somebody who's just died. And Spider-Man pops in kind of to pay respects. And all these guys are bums, and they're just like, no, what are you doing here? And the one's like, if I take him out, my rep's going to go through the roof or something like that. But anyway, he just takes out some money, drops it so that they can just like get him a coffin and a good place in the ground.
Right.
And it cuts to a scene that we've seen a few times of a guy literally digging a grave.
Yep.
So, and that's one thing that's really interesting that I noticed this second read. There's a whole lot of, like, this reads more like a TV show or a movie than most comics that I feel like I've read that are older, where we're always checking in on the action in other places, which in this case happens to a lot of times be a graveyard.
Yeah, there's like a pseudo comic equivalency of what B-roll would be almost like it's, we're getting the text of something else while we taking a picture of something else.
And then we have this interesting section where, I don't know, Spider-Man gets home, he's laying down, and Spider crawls down the wall, and he just kind of laughs and turns off his light. And then we turn the page, and Kraven is literally surrounded by spiders, and he's eating them, and he looks like...
There's some
I don't know.
Horror-esque panels in this for sure. Like,
and it keeps
pretty dark.
Cutting to him as he's like eating them. There's like spider guts coming out of him. Because I'm going to go ahead and just say what we end up, he feels like in order to be a better Spider-Man, he needs to be one with the spiders. He needs to take the spiders in, take on and I think he's also taken some like hallucinogens and like different things to make him to the point where between that and all the spiders he's eating, he will literally become a spider.
Yeah, he's trying to embrace that. So, I mean, again, we'll be jumping all over this as we kind of read this and putting together, but essentially Kraven is going to be trying to take out Spider-Man so that he can become Spider-Man in what he considers a better version of that person and what he considers is what they actually do.
And then at one point, Spider-Man feels I don't know if he has Spidey sense or what, but he's just out doing his rounds, and he runs into Kraven, who shoots him, but it's with some sort of dart. And Spider-Man starts hallucinating, seeing Ned, who we didn't say, but like Ned has apparently in this storyline just died recently. So he's like talking, he's like, no, that's not you, you're dead. And then Kraven pops up and he's like, oh, it's you. And he's like, with a rifle? That's not really your style. That might be from later. But anyway, the dart has done something to him, and Kraven drops a net on him, basically taking him captive. And then before too long, we cut to Kraven's estate, which is this giant mansion, and we're out in the graveyard, and Spider-Man has been laid in this coffin, and they put him down in the ground, and Kraven just laughs as he fills the grave hole, whatever you would call it, with dirt. It's just like, oh man, that just went hard real fast.
Yeah.
Spider-Man's dead.
Right. So we end issue 1 with Kraven immediately hunting, seemingly killing Spider-Man and putting him in the ground. And he doesn't even bother to take off his mask. Like, he's so enthralled with, and that's telling immediately right there, he's not interested in the man behind the mask. In his mind, Spider-Man is Spider-Man, period. There's nobody back there. He is this prime predator, and from the outside looking in, Kraven sees just somebody taking out people. In Kraven's mind, Spider-Man is just hunting, and it happens to be bad guys or whatever. Like, that's what he sees. And in his mind, if he's the greatest hunter, he thinks he can do that better than Spider-Man. So I don't even think here he knows who Peter Parker is. Like, that concept is gone from his mind, which is actually extremely important to carry from the rest of this issue. Is that the thing that makes Spider-Man so great is the fact that Peter Parker is under there, and he's a human, and there's humanity to his presence and his grace and everything that he is about. Like, the humanity of Spider-Man, the humanity of Peter Parker is what makes Spider-Man so great. So anyway, on to the
there was something that I noticed that we'll get into a little bit in this one, but I feel like there is one character, and actually that changes a little bit in the end of that character's arc, but in this story, I feel like every time we get the narration blocks, it's like the person has two people inside their head.
Yeah.
Kraven is always like arguing with himself. Spider-Man's definitely arguing with himself.
Yes.
Even Mary Jane, to a certain extent. We're going to see a guy in here in just a second, Vermin.
Yep.
And I feel like until his last page, or last book, he is like the only one that seems like he is the same guy the whole way through.
Constantly.
I thought it was interesting. I don't know if there's anything to read into that, but like,
I think so.
Argument every single person within their head.
I think just the whole fact that there is kind of a duality or to the perspectives of how people see Spider-Man adds a whole bunch. It's just kind of like playing off of that concept, that motif throughout the whole comic run, is that, again, Kraven sees Spider-Man a certain way, Spider-Man sees himself a certain way, Mary Jane sees Spider-Man a certain way, and there's just an entire story. It's the whole reason that the phrase, like, well, that's your side of the story exists, or you even heard my side of the story, because that perspective can absolutely change everything. And they play off of that pretty heavily, I think, through this entire run. So even showing that maybe you have varying thoughts on even yourself. Like, we see that especially in the back end of this series, like Spider-Man having the confidence to, or rather maybe having the confidence to actually do some of the things he's going to do, even if he is absolutely terrified in the moment. Anyway, you want to carry on with this one?
So we open up with the gravestone. Here lies Spider-Man, slain by the hunter, and Kraven is standing there looking on in a Spider-Man outfit and just laughing. We get just enough to be like, okay, something's happening. And there's a rat on the grave, which is more just foreshadowing, in my opinion. Then we cut to just some random woman. I don't know if we know who this is, but she's walking. It's raining in New York, and then she sees a rat and it's like, what is this? This is gross. And she kind of trips and falls, and then something's hand reaches and grabs her and pulls her down into a sewer.
Yes.
And then we see it's Vermin, who is basically like a human rat.
Yes.
It looks like. They talk a little bit about somebody did like actual experiments on him. I can't remember if they say who. Do you remember?
I can't. He's another one of the older Spider-Man villains that's kind of been around. They brought him back, and he actually is weird. I mean, some of his moments are a little weird, I think, throughout this run, but he actually does have some important roles, just as far as his role to play in this story. Yeah.
But anyway, he takes her, and we don't really see, but we know that he's like, I am Vermin, and he's talking about how hungry he is and all this stuff.
They kind of play off of that cannibal thing, I think, a lot from him.
And later on, they're going to call him the cannibal killer or something like
right.
that. Then we cut to Mary Jane, and she's just kind of like, where is Peter? What is going on? And there's another rat there, and she kills it with a boot, and she's like, oh, what did I just do? Mm-hmm. But basically, she's like, we're newlyweds. Why aren't you here?
Right.
But even she has this second thing, like her conscious mind is like saying, maybe he's just out, he's swinging, he's saving people. I'm sure he's fine. And then a darker note block says dead, so she's arguing with herself. So anyway, then we cut back to Kraven, and he is literally crawling around like a spider, and he in the Spider-Man outfit, and he goes and he starts just like, there's spiders everywhere. He's like licking some strange thing. I'm just assuming it's more hallucinogens, because before too long he sees these spiders that are either there or he's imagining them or whatever. They like form into a giant super spider, and he just like starts fighting that thing.
Yeah.
And then we cut back to Vermin, and it's pretty gross. There's a rib cage there, so I'll give you 2 guesses what he just did to that lady.
Yeah.
And anyway, he's kind of thinking about, just going through all kinds of stuff. Over the whole thing, we kind of hear he may not be the biggest fan of Spider-Man. Spider-Man tried to get him, and even Captain America. We realized that apparently at some point Spider-Man and Captain America fought Vermin and
barely won. I think.
Yeah, barely won. So apparently, even though he looks like just a B-list, D-list character,
right?
He's got something. Probably just because he is so ruthless,
right?
So then we cut back to Mary Jane, and she's walking down. What did this guy say? And he sees a couple guys like ogling her. He's like, ooh, think I'm going to die. I've never seen any pants that tight. Yeah. He's like, yeah, and that red hair. Hey, tight pants, come and show us your red hair. And I was just like, this is the most ridiculous catcalling I've ever seen.
Yeah, unfortunately, I believe that this is probably not a stretch from...
Oh, no. I mean, I'm just imagining it should be way worse.
Yeah.
And they're trying to make it comics code approved.
Yeah.
So they're just talking about pants and hair. But anyway.
I like she tells them to get stuffed.
Yeah. So anyway, and intermixed with this, we see more of the hallucination fight between Kraven and the giant spider. We see more of Vermin, trying to come up to find more to eat or whatever. And these guys chase Mary Jane down an alleyway, and Spider-Man comes in, and she's like, I'm saved. And this Spider-Man, who we know to be Kraven, just like waylays these guys, like not being playful, not like webbing them up.
No banter.
Yeah, it's just like, boom, crack your skull. And Mary Jane's looking on like, this isn't Peter. What is happening? And he just zips away, and we see that Kraven, or also Vermin, has made up above ground. And then the last thing we see is another shot of that gravestone, Spider-Man slain by the hunter with a spider crawling up a bit. So
yeah. So some interesting things happen here. We get to see what a little bit more, and I want to speak carefully about this to make sure I don't say anything inappropriate, so please call me out if I do. They kind of lean to, or how do I say this? Later on in the comics, they speak to the mental health of Kraven, I think, quite a bit. And they even use the word crazy, which, if I'm not mistaken, is probably not the most politically correct term to use anymore. But just that they do imply heavily, especially through the art, when he's starting to like have these like inner struggles of like what is actually happening to his brain as he's trying to literally become the Spider-Man, and he's eating bugs and insects, and like as great as he is, like this physical human specimen of just power and agility and strength, like that there's something deteriorating up here that it's like causing him to like see things through this specific lens. And therein lies like part of the tragedy, right? Like of this story. And I really do think that like as we get through this, we'll see that this is almost like a Marvel, not a Greek tragedy, but a Marvel tragedy, or at least there's parallels of just chasing something to the extent of just absolutely becoming engulfed in it. And what does that do for one's mental health?
I think for the next issue, I think I can summarize it in about 60 seconds.
Do it.
So I like
this is Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man.
Yes. Number 131.
Yep.
So I do like the very first page we see Spider-Man hanging down upside down like we normally see, but if you look close, it's actually he's holding a rope.
Yes.
So it's like it's still Kraven. But basically what we learn is Kraven has been out doing his Spidey thing.
Right.
And, some cops seem to appreciate it because he's, doing their job for him. But I'm sorry, I hit the wrong button.
You're good.
So meanwhile, with that, he feels like he's doing this. And we also see Vermin continuing to do more and killing more people, eating more of them. And somehow he has control of rats even. And
kind of like Ratcatcher
yeah,
from Suicide Squad.
so basically what this whole issue is working towards is an altercation between Kraven, Spider-Man, and Vermin. And basically they fight in the sewer and Kraven's able to best him.
Yeah,
and
like
he
pretty easily too.
Yeah,
right?
he's like, yeah, Spider-Man couldn't do it. He needed help from Captain America, but I've bested you myself. And he like knocks him unconscious and carries him out of the sewers. So like, we don't know where he's taking him yet. We'll find out soon.
Yeah, what's super interesting about this one is that for whatever reason, and I'm curious, I would be curious to go back and read whatever. There's got to be, maybe they even pointed it out, like the editor or something. Whatever comic Cap and Spidey fight Vermin in originally that they barely get buy-in. Somehow Kraven is aware of this moment in time, and it's like stuck to him in his head that if he went up against Vermin, he would not only not need Captain America's help, but he would absolutely destroy him, and by proxy, be the definition in his mind of a better Spider-Man, a better hunter.
Take the one thing that, or take not the one thing, but take something that Spider-Man couldn't do himself, and you do it yourself, and yeah, you're better. But I do think that comes a lot from the fact that the difference between a hero and a villain, the hero has a line.
Right.
The villain doesn't. So there's just so many things that you could take that argument with and be like, oh, I'm a better Professor X because Professor X is a bad example because most of the time he's a jerk.
Yeah.
I'm a better insert anybody
Right.
than because I took care of this bad guy.
Right. Yeah. He's just purely looking at it from this very machismo, feat of strengths sort of thing that he's a better hunter. And again, they kind of play off of that, I think, a little bit too. With there's several depictions of just spiders, like the insects. Actually, they're not insects, are they? They're arachnids. Yeah, and then rats throughout this whole thing. So they're just kind of like interjections of the art that kind of show them in their most primal form, and kind of like the implications of them hunting or surviving. And again, spiders are notoriously like good hunters for what they do. Like they plan out their things, they kill their prey, they build webs, they catch things. For Kraven to become a spider, to become Spider-Man, and to be able to do that better than this, the Spider-Man that we know, it's just absolutely his end goal. And this was a big moment of him taking out Vermin, the cannibal killer, to prove that he could do that. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll jump right back in with the last couple issues. Be right back. And we're back, and we're going to keep on keeping on.
So we're starting back in with Web of Spider-Man number 32.
32, yeah,
and we finally, you can tell something's going down because if you look at I think the trade paperback collection of these books, I'm pretty sure they have like a modernization of this cover. So you see like Spider-Man in his black suit crawling out of the grave.
Yeah, this is such an iconic cover.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah. So we finally get to check back in with Peter, and he's there's so many naked dudes in this one.
Oh yeah.
Peter is like in fetal position on a field of white.
They're not showing anything.
Yes. But he's just like starting to he's awakening from something, and Ned pops in to talk to him, and during this, like Peter's like, "What's been going on? Where am I? What is this? Wait, Ned, you're dead." And it's a pretty gruesome scene. Ned's like, "Wait, what? Oh, I am dead." And he like panel by panel decomposes.
Right.
And then, Spider-Man or Peter Parker, he starts to remember things, and like you see the, memories of spiders, and then a spider crawling down a thing, and then Peter crawls out of this giant spider. Like this is all like, I have a feeling if I saw this on screen and I wasn't prepared for it, I would get like, I would get grossed out. Because let me interrupt and say, spiders are disgusting. I do not like them. Like, me and Holly have this argument regularly, and I swear I'm right. Spiders are worse than snakes. Because spiders, I've heard that you're never more than 6 feet away from a spider. Like, there's always a spider somewhere, and they're tiny and they can crawl. And like a snake,
feel like snakes are worse.
No,
I'd have a harder time killing a snake than I would a spider.
Well, yeah, just because they're harder to kill.
So that's why they're worse.
But they're big. So like, I think if a snake were in this room with us, we'd know.
Yeah, I'd be
if a black widow were in here, yeah, not so much. So anyway, we have this. This made me think of like Mysterio,
yes, just the
nightmare vibes.
Yeah.
So anyway, but bit by bit, Peter kind of comes to, and he realizes what's been happening. He's like, he starts like clawing at something above him, and we keep seeing these faces. Like, he's remembering that Kraven had something to do. Kraven pulled a gun on him. What is this?
Right.
Like, he's remembering his last moments. And then boom, we see him, or I should say Krakoom. We see him crawling out of the grave. It's always thundering and lightning in this story.
Yeah, the art in general is very dark and rainy and like gritty. It's definitely fits.
He starts crawling, like he sees Kraven. I can't believe I couldn't remember Kraven. We've been talking about him. He sees Kraven's house, and he goes in and he sees these newspapers out there, Spider-Man, Berserk, and he puts together, he's been gone for 2 weeks, and in that time, Kraven is out there acting as Spider-Man, completely ruining his good name.
Yeah. They also kind of play off of this this is not spider sense. Kraven does not have spider sense, but he does have this like animal like awareness of just Spider-Man for some reason. There is like an element of him that has become so in tune with what he's obsessed with that he is aware that Spider-Man has crawled out of the grave, that he's back. And this awareness also kind of hints that this might have been planned the entire time.
Yeah. And then he runs into a couple of, I guess, Kraven's assistants, and he kind of roughs him up, but he doesn't kill him,
Yeah.
And he busts out because he's like, I've got to go figure this out. And meanwhile, we also see Vermin in a cage.
Yes.
An electrified cage, I think, though we don't know where it is yet. Then we see Mary Jane, and she's just like sitting there like, what? Where has he been? It's been 2 weeks. And she goes to throw her phone in frustration, and it's whipped out of the air.
Yeah, this is interesting also. Like, so we kind of touched on this earlier that Kraven saved Mary Jane from those jerks. But after she was watching him like absolutely beat up these guys, like to the point of almost killing them, she like screamed at him to stop. And then Spider-Man, whoever's into that mask, just left, and she's not seen him since.
Yep.
So she's stuck in this really interesting spot of,
Like, that
I
can't be
haven't
him.
seen
Yeah.
Peter. I hope he's not dead.
Yeah.
I think he's alive. I just saw him save me, but he was not acting like himself. So she's trying to decide, do I come to terms with reality and accept that he's dead and somebody else isn't under there? Or do I think that my husband, who I just married, has turned to
Broken.
the darkest parts of his psyche?
And there was a scene that I glossed over in a previous issue where she went to go talk to somebody about it and decided against it before that. So anyway, Spider-Man pops in. Peter, he takes off the mask, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, it is you!" And they, it quickly fast forward.
Yeah.
He's resting, he's sleeping, and his Spidey sense starts going off, and he starts thinking or whatever, and he's like, "No, I need to go take care of this." And Mary Jane's like, "But you just got here. You need to rest." And he's like, "No, I've got to take care of this." And then he zips out, and he gets back to Kraven's thing, and he walks in, or he crawls in. And he's hanging from the ceiling, looking on as Kraven is standing there in the outfit, just smiling.
Yeah, this is such a great panel. And then you see Kraven just realize that he's here. Like, instantly he's been waiting for him. Seemingly for one last chance to show him that after he's had all this time to confirm his own thoughts that he could be better than Spider-Man, now he wants to show him that he is the superior Spider-Man, pun intended.
Yeah. So then, we pick up in the next book. This is Amazing Spider-Man number 294, Part 5, Thunder. And there's spiders and rats
Setting these.
on the main page. Makes me never want to go to New York.
I love
all
New
these
York. It's very
spiders
dirty.
and-
There's rats everywhere. I'm not kidding.
That's why you love
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, it's really awesome.
That's funny.
I once went to New York and saw a rat. I'm not joking. I'm not exaggerating. This rat was 2 feet long and carrying a massive slice of pizza and crawling up a wall in the subway in New York. It was the craziest thing I've ever
That's
seen
awesome.
in my life.
Yeah.
It was massive. It was like bigger than my cats.
That's
It was huge.
crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know what I would do if I saw that.
Yeah.
Speaking of giant rats, Vermin is in his cage and he's just going crazy, like trying to get his way out. Then we get back to that scene that we just talked about, Spider-Man hanging, looking on Kraven. And they just start fighting. And like Kraven's not even fighting back.
Yeah.
And Kraven, he's like, okay, yeah, here we go. And he takes off the Spider-Man outfit and puts on his Kraven stuff. And basically leads him down where Vermin is. And I can't remember exactly what he's going through right here because I'm just looking at this giant thing. But
Yeah, there's a lot of inner monologue of Kraven basically thinking about what Peter has gone through, where he's been, what the spider means to him versus what it means to Kraven. And he's basically not fighting because he says he's already won. He has nothing left to prove to Peter at this point. Like he in his mind, he's already won.
yeah, and I think he's essentially trying to give Peter the chance to kill Vermin and
Right.
stop him once and for all. And Peter doesn't want to do it. And meanwhile, he's in this Spider-Man outfit and Kraven's in his. So Vermin thinks Peter Parker is the guy who beat him up and took him down. He's like, don't hurt me, don't burn me, don't do any of this anymore.
Right.
And Peter's like, I don't want to do that. I want to help you. And Vermin doesn't believe it. Anyway, Vermin ends up getting out and Kraven is basically like, look, you can either come after me or you can go after Vermin, you
Right.
know? And I think he kind of says, look, my fight with you is done. So we all know that you need to go after this. And Spider-Man's like, the next time I meet you, you know, this is going to be different.
Yeah.
Um,
It says right here, like Kraven's looking at Vermin, and he says, he was the final test, the final proof. You were unable to defeat him alone. You and Captain America together could barely do it, but I defeated him. Look at him whimpering, terrified. And he's like, I did it. Now here's your chance to prove that you can do it. And he kind of knows, he knows that he can't, but not for the same, the interchangeable word here in his mind is can't and won't. Kraven thinks he
It's
can't.
that line.
Spider-Man knows he won't.
yeah.
So, but in Kraven's mind, that's what makes him a better Spider-Man, a better hunter.
So Spider-Man jumps out and we have this crazy, I keep saying crazy, I'm sorry. This scene where, I don't know, I saw it coming and like we said, we mentioned this in the beginning. So I'm sorry, but Kraven goes to this coffin and pulls out a rifle and sticks it in his mouth. And, you know, the next thing we see, he's dead and laying in the coffin himself. And it's just like, I did not expect it to go there.
Yeah.
Like, I know it says Kraven's Last Hunt, but I'm like, he has to be, and this is going to ring even truer in the next issue. He has to be one of the most honorable bad guys that I've ever seen. If like, he's honestly like, yeah, I did my thing. And instead of trying to go, you know, keep pushing the envelope, he's
Right.
like, I proved myself, even if just to myself. And that's all I need. I'm just like, that's
Yeah.
honorable might not exactly be the right word, but it's something like that, you know? I was just like, wow, okay. I didn't quite, the first time I read it, I didn't see that coming. I knew it was happening the second time.
Right. Yeah. It's pretty heavy. Yeah. Right here, I just found the panel when it shows just the silhouette where it says they said my mother was insane. They said that at one other point. It really is this kind of heavy thing of just like, he did what he set out to do. He knew for some reason, whether that being, they never overtly say in the beginning that he was having suicidal thoughts. I still don't know that was necessarily what this was. But he did acknowledge that he felt something saying that he wasn't going to be around much longer. And that was his whole thing, was he's trying to prove before he's not here anymore that, he asked himself, what's the superior hunter out there? he thought that he thinks he is that, but he thinks everybody else thinks it's Spider-Man. So he's got to prove to the world that it's him and he can be a better Spider-Man. While tragically getting it completely wrong. He's not a better Spider-Man because what he was doing wasn't what Spider-Man is and stands for.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the tragedy within the whole thing, and that he thinks he's won. This is similar to, let's see. This is spoiler alerts for the end-ish of Squid Game. They see the old man that was kind of behind everything, who was acting like a contestant in Squid Game and ends up being the one that was putting it on. And he's in that hospital bed dying, or he's in that building dying. And he basically makes that bet that nobody's going to come help the homeless person that's on the ground down there. And somebody does come and see him, but the old man dies before seeing that happen. So the old man passed away thinking that he was right.
Yeah.
And the hero of that story knows he was wrong, but doesn't have a chance to tell him because he's too clouded, and in the Squid Game's instance, the clouding is just death. He can't actually see it anymore. So there's some parallels there. Not that these were inspired by each other at all, but it's just very interesting. And again, I keep thinking the word tragedy because it is. It's just showing a man of obsession, and that obsession is completely skewed and portrayed incorrectly in his mind, but it is his perspective, so he believes it to be true. So yeah, super heavy. It is probably more than a lot of things depict some suicide. You don't actually see him get shot, but you see the aftermath of it a little bit, and pretty tragic. And then there's one more issue. Is that correct?
Yeah, Peter Parker,
Wow.
Peter Parker, Spectacular Spider-Man, number 132. We jump in with Spider-Man. He's crawling through the sewer, going after vermin, but it keeps jumping back and forth from like recollections of the sewer and him in the coffin as he was trying to crawl out. So we see like an actual representation of him crawling out.
PTSD, right?
Yeah, as opposed to the mental journey that we saw in the previous issue, or a couple back. Anyway, he finds his way down to the sewer, there's rats everywhere. And we also, once we get past him out of the coffin, the B-roll, if you will, starts being Kraven being laid into a coffin, oddly enough, wearing the Spider-Man outfit again.
Yeah.
And being put in the ground. But Peter is out there fighting, or getting to vermin. And then we have this one page that completely changes everything, in my opinion. Like this, there's
with the detectives?
Yeah, the page 8, it looks like, where there's a note, a confession from Kraven. And you see a picture of him standing over the grave of Spider-Man, him putting on the Spider-Man outfit. And you're just like, wait, what? Like this completely goes against unless I guess he wanted to prove that, yeah, that 2 weeks that everybody thought that was Spider-Man that was doing that was actually me. But like he doesn't reveal who Spider-Man was. He could have done that. He goes through and basically does what we need so many times for somebody to do for Peter to be like, look, he's not the bad guy.
Right.
Like the one more, or the Brand New Day that I'm reading right now, I need somebody to come through and be like, look, he's not a bad guy, but everybody hates him.
Right.
So like,
what's interesting though in that whole moment that you're talking about is that the motivation behind him doing that is completely backwards, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like he's doing it so people see
it was me.
It was me. I was Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And the things that he's doing in almost a braggadocio way is actually convicting of himself.
Yeah. So anyway, we get down and Peter does his best to stop Kraven. He's like, look, no.
Vermin, you mean?
Yeah, sorry, Vermin. It wasn't me. I wasn't doing this to you. I want to help you. And I can't remember exactly how it happens, but basically all you need to know is he gets Vermin up above ground and is able to get him tied up to where the police can come and get him. And he's like, no, I have a friend who's going to help you. He even talks about where he's going to send him. There's a place.
I think he contacts Reed Richards. Did we just lose sound?
Hello? This operation stopped.
The recording stopped?
Mine shouldn't have done that.
Right.
Oh, okay. I'm back.
We're back on.
So, yeah, we were just talking and we had a little technical malfunction. I believe what we last said was that Peter had managed to tie up with his webs Vermin and was now going to hand him over to the police and then get Reed Richards to help. Try to figure out how to cure him. And Vermin is actually like, wait, what? You're actually trying to help me? So, I mean, maybe Vermin's starting to believe him. And then Peter's, as he's swinging away, one of the cops says something that I thought, oh, and now, okay. More technical difficulties. Heck of a thing, huh? After all he's been through, all Kraven did to him, he's still got it in him to look out for this murdering beast. And as Peter's swinging away, he's like, wait, how did they know about Kraven? I'll figure that out later. Yeah. So he doesn't know that about Kraven's confession. And Peter gets home. Him and Mary Jane embrace happily. And then we see Kraven actually getting laid to rest by the people who work for him at home. Here lies Sergei Kravenov, Kraven the Hunter. He died with honor. And that's it. And it ends with the same exact poem or whatever that started. Spider, spider, burning bright in the forest of the night. What immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? So,
excuse me.
And that's it. It's over.
It is over. Closing thoughts on that. What did you guys think?
Like I said, it was better the second time because I knew it was coming, so I was able to read more like subtext, context,
right?
Text.
What about you, Tori? Did you like this one? A little too anything for you?
I liked it. A friend of mine was reading it at the same time, and she pointed out that it's poetic and very. It reminded her of earlier Batman.
Cool.
Issues, which I don't know much about, but
yeah, I understand, especially in the context of everything else that was coming out around it and had come up until then, why it's so highly regarded as just such a solid Spider-Man story.
I mean, it doesn't feel like most comics that I've even read now.
Right.
You know, it felt more screenplay-ish. You know, like this is a story. It's not just swinging webs and fighting people. Like, obviously, they had plotted it out well in advance, which I'm sure most do. But I've read somewhere I know they don't. So, yeah.
There's just a lot of depth to the characters, especially the villain. Like, Kraven was essentially just not important before this, and suddenly has become one of the most interesting Spider-Man villains of all time. In a lot of people's eyes, just adding that complexity, that duality between Kraven and Spider-Man and Peter Parker, and just people's perception of you, your own perception of yourself. And, those are relatively heavy questions and just content for a comic book in general to be asking, even for today. It's not like every single comic book that comes out is just like hitting you with all these humanity concepts and all that, it's just, it's not that at all. And the fact that this came out in 1976 or whenever, I guess it was the late 80s, 87, I believe. It's just, it was well ahead of its time. The art feels like it's of the time. That's not to say it's bad, but the art does definitely, like, it's not like The Killing Joke that feels like pretty fresh art even today, in my opinion.
Well, like we said, The Killing Joke, I think, has two different art versions.
Right. So that's true, yeah.
I'd be curious to find the original.
Yeah.
I would strongly recommend, because my reading of it changed because of my thoughts of it, because of reading Court of Owls. So, like, I'd be curious to see, if you've never read any of these, go read Kraven's Last Hunt and then turn around and read Batman from 2011. It's from the Batman number 1, I think, New 52, is the Court of Owls. It's like a 6-issue run. There's so much symmetry. There's that poem. Between the two, whether it's purposeful or not, it's not the same story. But like, as I was reading, it's just it's not hilarious. It's just interesting to me that I happened at random to read those two back to back. I'm curious if anybody would read those two back to back and have similar thoughts to me.
I feel like they had some similar ingredients. Cool. Any other thoughts before we get on the trivia?
No.
I keep thinking you're going to say something of substance, and
since
it's just no.
Since there's not a camera on him, like, the reason we both looked is because Torrance like very slow and dramatically put the microphone up to his face, and we're like, "Yep," and he just no.
Yeah. Cool. Well, are you guys ready for trivia?
Yes.
Do you have a faster than?
Time to move on. No, I don't.
And it's time for our lightning round of trivia, where our questions are faster than Kraven decided that he had already beaten Spider-Man just by being himself.
Well, he did eat a bunch of spiders too.
He did pretty fast. Yeah.
So, I have 1 point, which came from Torrance, but I'm going to count it because I'm winning. So, like we said, for Spidey month, we're going to do this, which I thought was going to be 4 weeks long, but there's 5 Mondays in January. So this will be a 5 episode 1. So do you want me to ask first?
Please.
All right. My question's pretty straightforward. You either know it or you don't.
Probably don't.
Who was the speaker at Peter Parker's high school graduation?
This is in the comics.
Yes.
Let's see.
Yeah. So to be truth, we are talking comics based on what I've heard multiple sources, not the movies.
Right.
Because we did see in the Amazing Spider-Man, Gwen Stacy spoke. So
yeah.
I'm not talking about that.
Who would speak at Midtown High? I'm going to guess Reed Richards.
That would have been good.
Yeah.
Do you have a guess?
Tony Stark.
No. Both of those good guesses.
Yeah.
In fact, it is J. Jonah Jameson.
Wow, nice. Yeah, that's way more dramatic. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool. None for me. I have one pertinent to this actual run. So, DeMatteis, who wrote this story, actually had this idea many years before he was actually able to pull this off at Marvel. And because editorial was stopping him from doing this, he actually took this elsewhere and pitched it several times, even to DC, to do it with a different set of characters. Can you tell me what 2 characters he tried to do this with before he got the green light for Spider-Man and Kraven?
I mean, my gut is Batman. And hold on.
I thought you were going to go, hold on, let me Google it.
Batman and Joker?
That is correct.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I sat there thinking for a long time. I was like, I thought Batman and Joker as soon as I said Batman.
Yes, Batman and Joker was his pitch. They told him no because the Killing Joke had just finished, and it wouldn't have really worked. After that, he pitched it for Batman and what's there's another big villain, not Ra's al Ghul, the something. I can't remember. And then he pitched it for another character as well from Marvel, I think, but it didn't work out, or maybe it was another villain. I don't know. But he finally, like several years later, got to do it with Spider-Man and what was going to be a new character. And then he found out, or a new villain, and he found out that his new villain was a lot like Kraven the Hunter. So they just decided to retcon and make him more interesting.
Nice.
Yeah, super cool. Any for you?
I got
Trivia.
one.
Is this another episode of Name That?
This is another episode of Name That Supervillain.
Huzzah!
Whoever
You need to write a jingle for that. Name that supervillain.
I think you just did it.
Yeah.
Whoever says it first wins.
Uh-huh.
So be
ready.
Be ready.
The Vulture.
You're out.
Oh, no.
No, it doesn't work like that.
Okay.
This 6'7", 400-pound Kevlar wearing
Kingpin.
Yep.
Can I hear the rest?
Goes by the name of Kingpin.
Okay.
Yeah.
7'6"?
6'7".
6'7".
Oh, okay.
Which is still pretty tall.
Yeah.
400 pounds, though. Got some beefcake on him.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else?
I
Any
have 2
closing
points.
ideas?
You've got 1 point.
Why do I? Oh, because of that. Yeah, I got a point. I was like, I didn't get anything. Any closing thoughts? This was a fun one.
Join the Discord because we will let you know which of the... We got 3 more Spidey runs we're covering in January.
Yep.
And if you were to jump on there and you just check to see which ones were voted for, you would know what a couple of them are, but we got a special one for the 5th week.
Yes, it's going to be pretty cool. What are we covering next week? Is this...
Well, I don't know if we've said yet. You'll have to join the Discord to find out.
We'll let you know there.
Because we haven't decided yet.
Right, yeah. We have some cool things coming up for the rest of Spider-Man month. And then if you look at the significance of something that is celebrated that's super cool for February, you'll get an idea of where we're going with that. So until next time, I think that's all we got. Again, follow us, like, subscribe, leave reviews, podcast, do all the social media things.
Seriously, like,
engage with us.
It'd be huge if you just told somebody about us.
Oh, yeah.
If you're listening and you like it, just be like, oh, hey, you kind of dig comics? Just check these out. They've got like 100 episodes. You can pick and match which ones you want to listen to.
I've literally picked up people's phones, opened their podcast app, and subscribed to us for them, and it's worked. Like, people are like, oh, thank you for doing that. I actually enjoy your podcast. I'm like, you're welcome. Some people are lazy. They're like, oh, I don't want to unlock my phone. I'm too sleepy. I get it, but while you're sleeping, you can listen to Two Man Comic Book Club. Like, you know, that's
sleep
what you
binge.
Sleep.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's been it. Drew's gonna nail us with some sweet outro music, and then we're gonna get out of here. Yeah,
that's right.
I
have a job. I was sitting here trying to think of a tag that I could just say afterwards.
Let us know what you want to read, y'all. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Oops, I hit the button too soon.
Two Man Comic Book Club podcast is hosted by Alex Miller and Drew Morris. Our graphic and logo work is done by Tessa Price, and our original compositions and theme music were composed by Drew Morris.